Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. But try your best to go to bed and wake up the same time every day. That's really, you don't want to go to bed like 9 one day, then 11 one day, then 8 one day, then 1 one day, right? You really don't want to swing all over the place. And what that comes down to is time management skills. My boss, Eva, and my best friend up here is just phenomenally good at helping athletes plan calendars and getting Google calendars or notebooks to really think about how can we maximize our time to make sure we're getting ahead of assignments and ahead of meet schedules and ahead of the things that's the downtime, so that we're not up till 1 or 2 in the morning doing homework and waking up at 6 for school and being a groggy monster, right? So oftentimes you can find these small gaps in the day. So say you come home at 3 o'clock from school and you have practice, you have to leave by 4. Let's try to get home, get a snack, and then try to change and get our bag ready. And then just read 30 minutes of a book that we know we have to do next week for a book report, or just open the Google Doc and type the first paragraph of that English essay, or bust open that math packet and just do 5 problems, right? Just that forward momentum of starting something when you open it back up that night, or when you have to start from scratch, it's a lot easier to keep the snowball going downhill than start it altogether. So I'm really a big fan of trying to fill in those 30-minute gaps when athletes can find time for homework or doing something else, so that they're not up till 2 in the morning, and trying to be very proactive with tests and projects and essays and all that kind of stuff when meet season comes. And so if you have a big invitational in 2 weeks and you're flying to somewhere, try to talk to your teacher and be like, hey, listen, I have to go to a meet. I'm going to be, really crunched for time and busy. Is there anything coming up in the next 3 weeks that I could get ahead of time, or that I could get started on, or that I could know what book chapters I'm going to have to read, and I can read them on the plane going forward and backwards. Stuff like that really makes a difference. And I think the more you can teach athletes to manage their time outside the gym, it helps them not be as stressed to get to sleep or do whatever throughout the day. So things they suggest to me to pass on to athletes are to really fuel yourself well constantly throughout the day with a variety of different foods and things that are going to give you energy for practice and help you recover after. So I'm always telling athletes to just be absolute snack monsters. Which I mean by that is, on Sunday, tell your parents what things you like and what things you want to have for snacks, or go to the grocery store and help them pick things out and help them cook and help them put them in baggies. Non-perishable things. You can pack so much of that on Sunday, right? You can meal prep 3 snacks that you really love, or 2 snacks that you really love, and put them in containers and get them ready to go to pull out of the fridge when you come home from school, and you're not cutting something up from scratch or tossing it all in a Ziploc bag that you can have on the way to practice, in the car. There's a lot of things that you can just cut up apples and put them in trays. You can do all sorts of stuff. And it's amazing how much, an hour on Sunday or 2 hours on Sunday can equal 10 hours throughout the week. And I know that's true to myself because I meal prep as well. But teaching athletes, to be educated on what snacks they enjoy, what things give them energy, and what can be meal prepped on Sunday. Obviously dinners and breakfasts and stuff like that, you might have to cook from scratch, parents and or the kids. But if they can just help you prep some of the things by putting trail mix in different baggies, or putting granola in baggies, or putting, like I said, apples cut up into different, sections and putting them in sealed containers so they won't go bad. That stuff is incredibly, incredibly important, along with, water throughout the day, water bottle, trying to get some sort of an electrolyte drink at practice. If you have a long 3 to 4 hour practice, like a coconut water or some sort of a hydrogen, what's it called, electrolyte tablet or something like that. Like, the more you have this conversation and proactively talk about performance before or in the front part of season, you get in a rhythm, you get in a habit. A big error I used to make is you get in a season and it's about, okay, routines, it's about hitting meets, it's about competitions, which it is, but you can never forget to neglect the basics, right? Like, you cannot drift away from just the tried and true must-have things in people's programs. And I know it's stressful, right? You have 3 hours of practice, you got to warm up, you got to get up, you got to time warm, you got to do routines, you got to do corrections, you got to get to your next event. Like, I get it. It's really hard. But you want to make sure that you are always making time for crystal clear basics. So just doing handstand holds and flat line shapings and very basic, round off and cartwheel, and just understanding tap swings and very, very fundamental skills and shapes. The irony here is that you think that by only doing more routines and more hardcore connection skills, that's going to be the best thing. And it's important, but honestly, the other way is important too, which is by keeping those fundamentals and keeping those basics and clean lines and execution. That is extremely impactful on your routines, because those affect everything, right? Like, yes, your shoot over transition and stuff like that's important, and your round up back handspring transition is important, but by having a phenomenal handstand and working on your form and your knees and your calves and your toe point and your tension in your body, every skill will get better and look cleaner. So I really believe that like warm-ups are a phenomenal time to still just get some lines in, or starting a basic, if you're going to do 3 routines on bars, starting with just a 5-minute, 10-minute complex of basics before you do your timed warm-up is really, really important. And you'll see pommel guys do this for sure, which is they'll still do 5 front loops, 5 back loops, 5 stock loops, 5 mores, whatever their level is, right? That could be just scissors for younger gymnasts, but not neglecting that flawless approach to basics, I think is one of the things that I used to forget about a lot. And there's sometimes you're time crunched and you're trying to simulate a meet and you're just going to get to the event and time warm up and compete. Like I get there's a place for that, but there's always some times, whether it's every other weekend when you don't have a meet, that a Friday can be a nice basics day. Like Brett talked about this on his podcast, that Fridays, he loves doing some of that basics work when you're just refining things, putting the routines in the front end of the week. Other people are more basics on Monday. They like doing that to kind of get the cobwebs out, whatever works for you, but just don't neglect those basics. They're so, so important. And I think unfortunately the farther you get into season, the easier it is to just kind of like do routines and do routines and do routines. So yeah, whether it's a day in a week or whether it's in a warm up or in a prep, try your best to keep doing that. I really feel season is extremely important for highly quality, focused and reflective turns. And what I mean by that is not just like, in the summer, you might be doing 10 or 15 of a skill because you're trying to master it. And you might not sit there and stop and think about every single one. But in competition mode, I think those athletes that can really lock in and take very, very productive turns, whether that's a warm up or whether that's a half routine or a meet run through, not saying it's always going to go amazing or it's always going to go poorly, but whether it's bad nor good, you want to build the habit of self-reflection and critical analysis. So whether that's with video feedback or whether that's with a coaching feedback or whether that's with just thinking about your turns, I find that many times in season, especially the farther you get in season, you cannot smash people in routines and volumes, right? If you ask someone to do 10 beam routines every day for the entire part of season, someone's back's gonna get cranky, right? You're gonna have some people who are really struggling. Maybe it's mental. So I'd rather see in those situations come to beam, do a timed meet warm up exactly like you would ideally in the rotation of whatever meet you're going to, and do a timed warm up exactly how it goes, film them all. And then after that, have all the athletes look through their routines or talk with the coaches, and then go back and do maybe 2 to 3 corrections of things that were struggling, whether it's connections on their series or their dismount technique. Really hyper focus critically on those 3 turns, do drills for those things, then take a reset and then do another routine and maybe then another routine, right? Then go in that order. I'd rather kind of be highly critical of the errors made and correct them than just blow through 5 routines and just kind of be like, that was good. I think that that's really, really valuable. And my experience with coaches and athletes at the national level, it's partially because maybe they're older and they can't tolerate crazy training volume, but also they just find that the quality of their gymnastics and the quality of their practices is greatly enhanced when they have that automatic mode of like stop, pause, reflect, think, look at a video, do a drill. If I need, come back, watch something else, then go back up and do another routine. Right. That kind of very critical feedback loop is more productive than I just need to do 10 vaults in a row. Right. And what is your pre-routine ritual? Do you talk to your coach? Do you go through routine in your head? Do you stand by the chalk bucket and collect your thoughts on your own? Everyone is individual here, right? Like everyone has their own kind of swag they do. Whatever that is for that athlete or that gymnast and that coach connection, it has to be worked out well in advance and done every single time. Okay. And I'm a big fan of that with warmups and timed warmups, which is like, what's your first turn? What's your second turn? What's your third turn? It's not to say you can't wiggle and repeat something if you need it or make a change real quick if something happens in a lineup. But generally, you should know on turn 1, I'm doing kip, cast, handstand, pirouette, 3 of them to warm up. Second turn, I'm doing giant release. Third turn, I'm going to hop up and do a dismount, right? You should know exactly what those things are, how long they take, and how to kind of get into that, right? You can be flexible, but you should have a a warm-up routine for each event. You should have a pre-routine when you're actually saluting in front of a judge, and you should have a reflective loop that you have, right? It's, maybe not right after that routine because you got to go to the next one, but you should have those things in place. And the only way you get that is by practicing them. At the end of the day, it is just gymnastics. And I know people probably don't want to hear that. It's probably like a little bit soft and woo-woo, but I really believe that in the heat of all battle, competition, and I'm not super competitive, but I know people get real cutthroat and they want to win, as you should. They want to do well. They want their team to do well. They want people to perform to their preparation level and get kind of what was excitingly coming for them. But sometimes, man, it just doesn't go your way. It's just like the reality of the situation is you do it all right. Pressure sets are great. You're doing all the things, you're sleeping, you're doing all your prehab, and just like a random injury pops up, right? Or you're under the gun to hit this big vault and have it go crazy, and then you fall on your butt. It's just how it goes in gymnastics. You could be perfect in preparation, and sometimes it just kind of doesn't quite hit that day. And so in those moments, I have no problem with people being upset, and I would be upset too, and frustrated and upset. But getting to the point where you're kicking chairs and you're screaming and you're crying your eyes out and you're freaking out and screaming, like, come on, like that is just way too much. Like, you're allowed to be upset, and I'm giving athletes that opportunity to kind of take a moment, go in the bathroom, be upset, be mad, but we got 5 minutes to shake this off and get to the next event, because it's a safety thing. You have to be mentally ready for the next event to do this safely. But also, at the end of the day, we can fight again. We can come back to practice. We have another opportunity. It will work itself out, and doesn't mean it doesn't sting. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Doesn't mean you can't be upset. But I think sometimes people really wear their emotions heavy for too long, and sometimes it really negatively affects their entire life. Okay, so I really hope that athletes listening out there, or parents or coaches, remember that gymnastics is a privilege, not a right, and we get to do this because it's fun and it's voluntary. And sometimes that means that, you're not going to win everything, and you're not going to do super well all the time. And you have to separate your performance as an athlete from you as a human, right?